Hello, everyone, and welcome to this interesting episode of Ignition Time. Let's take a look at the fallout associated with the infrastructure package, with the president actually having to backtrack some of the things that he said in the past couple of days. Welcome to our channel, everyone. My name is Dr. Chhoda with Ignition Time. Let's start with this headline on your screen from CNN. Biden's frantic weekend saves the infrastructure deal, but leaves him on thinner political ice. So what's been going on, folks? Basically, the president backtracked when he initially indicated that he would not support the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and he had also said that he would not support it without a corresponding reconciliation bill. Well, folks, I'll quote directly from CNN. Joe Biden's cherished bipartisan infrastructure plan was nearly destroyed by a few of his own ill-chosen words, and this highlights both the fragility of the deal and his own hopes for a productive domestic presidency. Biden's extraordinary weekend effort to walk back his own remark on Thursday, interpreted as a threat to veto the bill if it didn't arrive at his desk alongside a multi-trillion-dollar Democratic spending plan, which is a reconciliation plan, appears for now to have succeeded. Republican senators publicly accepted that his comment linking the two bills, "If this is the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it," was a flub. But the president still gave other Republican opponents an opening to portray the two measures as a deceptive two-step. So you can start to see, folks, that this is starting to get a little bit controversial. Here's another headline on your screen, this time from the New York Times. Not my intent. How President Biden's impromptu comments upended a political win. President Biden walked back his stray remarks in a bid to salvage an infrastructure agreement that would cement his legacy as a bipartisan deal maker. So it's very clear that the president backtracked. In fact, let's take a look at an initial comment from the president. "If this is the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it." That's what the president said when he was answering a question about the timing of his legislative agenda. He said, "I'm not just signing the bipartisan bill and forgetting about the rest." And this is what Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine and a key negotiator, said. "We never had an inkling that there would be any kind of linkage. We always knew that there'd be another bill, but not that the success of the infrastructure package was going to be in any way dependent on the other bills." So it's very clear that the president did indeed walk back. In fact, this drama did not sink the deal, but President Biden did admit that his comments on Thursday left the impression that I was issuing a veto threat on the very plan that I had just agreed to. That was certainly not my intent. That's what the president said. Now, in the meantime, the president is continuing to face pressure from liberals within his own party. Let's take a look at the Congresswoman from New York, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat, when she was specifically asked on whether President Biden should issue a veto threat if the reconciliation package doesn't happen. She said this, I quote, "President Biden should not be limited by Republicans, particularly when we have a House majority. We have 50 Democratic senators and we have the White House." Let's roll the tape and hear from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let's watch.
Would you like the president to be issuing a veto threat on the bipartisan deal if the reconciliation package doesn't come to fruition?
Well, I think what's really important is that I think it's very important for the president to know that House progressives and I believe, the Democratic caucus is here to ensure that he doesn't fail. And we're here to make sure that he is successful in making sure that we do have a larger infrastructure plan. And the fact of the matter is that while we can welcome this work and welcome collaboration with Republicans, and in those areas where there is agreement, Republicans are more than welcome to join so that we can get this work on infrastructure done. But that doesn't mean that the president should be limited by Republicans, particularly when we have a House majority, we have 50 Democratic senators, and we have the White House. And I believe that we can make sure that he's successful in executing a strong agenda for working families.
And let's take a look at another article that breaks down some of her comments. This was published by NBC News. AOC cautions Biden to avoid being limited by Republicans on infrastructure bills. She said this is our one big shot, not just in terms of family, childcare, Medicare, but also on climate change. And she said, in those areas where there is agreement, Republicans are more than welcome to join so that we can get this work on infrastructure done. But that does not mean the president should be limited by Republicans. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, let's hear from Republicans. Let's hear from the Republican senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, who was actually on CNN State of the Union, and he said that tying the infrastructure deal to the larger reconciliation bill was never discussed during their talks with the White House. He said, and I quote, "The president's other effort was never linked to the infrastructure effort." He said he takes President Biden's walk back at his word. And he said, I quote, "I do trust the president." In fact, Mitt Romney said this about the infrastructure bill compromise: "I am totally confident that the president will sign it if it comes to his desk. The real challenge is whether the Democrats can get their act together and get it on his desk." Wow. In an open challenge to the Democrats, Mitt Romney essentially laid down the gauntlet. Let's roll the tape and hear Mitt Romney's interview with CNN's Jake Tapper on CNN's State of the Union. Let's watch.
Well, I do take the president at his word, and over the weeks and weeks of negotiations with Democrats and with the White House on an infrastructure bill, the president's other agenda was never linked to the infrastructure effort. We came to an agreement on the infrastructure effort in a way that I think is really impressive. As you know, it is true infrastructure: bridges, roads, rail, electric utility support, and so forth, and without raising taxes. And so this is a bill which stands on its own. I am totally confident the president will sign it if it comes to his desk. The real challenge is whether the Democrats can get their act together and get it on his desk. And I think the battle that's going on is not with Republicans. Republicans are going to support true infrastructure that doesn't raise taxes. But Democrats want to do a lot of other things, and I think they're the ones that are having a hard time deciding how to proceed.
And folks, if you thought that was interesting, Mitt Romney a few days ago on his YouTube channel seemed very confident about the infrastructure package. It's very important to watch him and his body language because it's very clear that he feels something is about to happen. Let's roll the tape and watch Mitt Romney just a couple of days ago on his YouTube channel essentially saying our deal is a bipartisan infrastructure package. Let's roll the tape and watch Mitt Romney in action.
I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that our infrastructure is old and in need of repair. And whether you're talking about rail or transit, our highways, our bridges, broadband going out to our rural communities, new water infrastructure, our power systems, some new technologies with regards to power, all these things are places that really do need some investment. And frankly, a lot of presidents have pointed this out. President Trump, for instance, suggested $2 trillion would be appropriate in an infrastructure package. That was never able to be made law under his administration. But a group of Republicans and Democrats have been working together over the last several weeks and months to come up with a bipartisan proposal. And we were able to work together and actually get something, if you will, done. We got an agreement. We spend $559 billion over the next 5 years for roads and bridges, highways, for our electric infrastructure, airport infrastructure, rail systems, transit, power, the list goes on. And this is done without raising taxes, without adding to the deficit. And we're pretty proud of the fact that we were able to work together collaboratively. I just came back from meeting with the president. The group of 8 of us who were negotiating this deal met with the president. He has been part of the negotiations and has signed off on them. So we've taken the next step, which is we have something that the president and a lot of Republicans and Democrats stand behind. We'll see whether it becomes law, but I think it's got a real good prospect for getting there.
Now let's hear what the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, has to say on ABC News. Manchin sounded pretty open to the idea of supporting a Democrat-only reconciliation bill. He even used the word human infrastructure, but he didn't want to spend too much. Here's a tweet on your screen from Burgess Everett, the Politico co-congressional bureau chief. And Burgess Everett says this: "We have worked on the one track, we're going to work on the second track," when he's quoting Joe Manchin. Now, Manchin did not say how large a bill he would support, but he did sound quite open to raising taxes, and he said he would support raising corporate tax rates to 25% and the capital gains tax rate to 28%. And Manchin sounds like he's thinking of something along the lines of the one and only Bernie Sanders, but a lot smaller. He said this, I quote from Burgess Everett: "If they think in reconciliation, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and support $6 trillion when we can only afford 1.5, maybe 2, then I can't be there." Pretty interesting comments. And so it's very clear, folks, that Manchin is going to come around, but essentially, he's going to come around within his own parameters. Speaking of parameters, Jeff Stein from the Washington Post points out that there are certain Democratic priorities that are in the infrastructure bill and certain Democratic priorities that are out. What is in the bill? Replacing all lead pipes across the country, clean drinking water for 10 million of our fellow Americans. Electric vehicle charging stations, 500,000 chargers nationwide. $73 billion for a power grid. $125 billion for roads, bridges. $66 billion for rail and $49 billion for public transit. What's out? Clean energy standards are out. $300 billion in clean energy credits are out. Elder care out. $213 billion for low-income housing out. Higher taxes on the rich and the corporations. But even though that's out, there's going to be more money to the IRS for enforcement. Electrification of the federal fleet and the White House family plan. All of that stuff is out. And folks, this is just for the bipartisan bill. Keep in mind that the Democrats will push for whatever they can. In fact, let's take a look at this headline on your screen from the Washington Post. What's in the White House Senate bipartisan infrastructure bill? It's a wide-ranging framework and some details are not available, but this is the beginning of a process that policymakers hope could lead to a historic investment. We'll provide you with the link to this article in the description section below. And finally, folks, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are likely to produce long-lasting immunity in what is essentially some encouraging news. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. This is your way of supporting our channel. You clicking the like button, you clicking subscribe. I appreciate you. Please click the like button one more time. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Thank you. Bye.